There haven't been a ton of documentaries that have come out lately, but one landed on Netflix this week that I think needs to be seen if you care at all about justice and enacting social change. 137 shots is frustrating, angering, and incredibly engaging. So let's talk about it. After a deadly chase and shooting in 2012, the Cleveland Police Department comes under heavy scrutiny as the county demands accountability. Now, I had no idea about this case, but right from the get go, it is insane. The whole thing begins with a car that's driving past a police station in Cleveland one night, and the car backfires. The officers outside the building at that time think they're being shot at, so they hop in their car and they begin pursuit. They also call in the shots fired, and an unbelievable chase ensues. There's something like 60 or more cop cars chasing this vehicle, with conflicting and varied reports of weapons being visible or a gun sticking out of the window. Speeds reach well over 100 miles per hour, and as more and more officers join in, others drop out, with continuing conflicting reports stating that the suspects are unarmed and that the car is just backfiring. The chase ends with the suspects arriving in an area that has no exit, to which the police then open fire. At the end of the ordeal, 137 shots have been fired, all by the police, and then obviously the suspects are killed. And there are more details within this that make it even more sickening and unbelievable, and I think the documentary covers them really well. There are interviews with the victims' family members, journalists, prosecutors, there's officers, members of the public, and the head of the Cleveland Police Officers Union. The presentation of this is like a really well executed argumentative essay. I appreciated that as something would be said or an idea would be presented, a question or objection would be raised in my mind, and then shortly after, it would be addressed by the documentary. Now, this is an hour and 45 minutes of angering but also thought provoking content. Now, when I first started watching, after the initial horror of just the number of bullets fired at these people, the question did arise in my mind of why in the world didn't the car pull over when the first cop car was chasing with lights and sirens? Now, I acknowledge how the black driver could have immediately been in fear for his life. I know that I have never had that same fear when I see the Christmas lights light up behind me because I'm white. But my point in bringing all this portion up is that from the information that is then uncovered by the documentary, I now completely understand why the driver didn't pull over. I mean, after hearing more details, I don't think I would have pulled over either. You can't just watch part of this documentary and pull bits and pieces. I mean, the full context of events is needed for understanding, and I'm glad that the film provides that. Something I appreciate is that the documentary does its best to tell both sides of the story. And there is a portion where one of the officers involved in the shooting is followed and then interviewed. Now, while I'm glad the documentary tried to give both perspectives, I found this portion to be sickening and reprehensible. I mean, it's a form of victim blaming and even gaslighting, attempting to shift sympathies from the real victims to the perpetrators. And I don't want you to hear from all this that I think all police are bad. I mean, that sentiment is shared by one interviewee in the documentary, and then other interviewees say the complete opposite, with, I think, some great rationale. And I'm really glad that both perspectives are included in this. Now, I have friends that are officers, and they're good people and good cops. But just like in any profession or group, there are the bad ones as well as the ones that have zero business wearing a badge, let alone carrying a gun. This documentary also focuses on another police shooting case in Cleveland that happened just a few years after the one with 137 shots. The film then uses this in addition to the original case to highlight the conversation that is needed about policing standards change. And even though this isn't fiction, there are certainly some villains in this, and I think a few of them are, or at least come across, as very racist and white-centric. And even if they're not, the blindsided devotion to a supposed brotherhood over anything else is quite disturbing. I mean, facts are covered up, testimony's not given. Basically, it's the refusal to act as public servants, where the universal model is to protect and serve. That kind of means telling the truth and outing dangerous coworkers if they put members of the public, which include officers, in danger. The storytelling aspect of this, I think, is very compelling. I mean, the documentary does an effective job of weaving all of the details together and using the interviews to get a well-rounded picture of the events. But just because this is compelling and even captivating, it is still incredibly difficult to watch. There were more than a few times where I had to pause this to either yell at the TV, voicing my flabbergastation, that's a word, right? Well, and shake off my disbelief at some of the things that I was hearing people say. And I really think this is an important documentary to watch because it highlights the issues that many cities in the United States face. And hopefully this can be added to the momentum for change. I hope you add this one to your watch list and check it out. There's no sex or nudity, but there is a ton of profanity and absolutely horrifying and unfortunately very real violence. I highly recommend checking out 137 Shots. Are there any good documentaries you've seen recently? I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.